Robert Connolly, congratulations on Paper Planes. In 25 words or less, can you give us the story of Paper Planes?
Paper Planes is the story of a young Australian boy from the bush who discovers he has a genius skill to make paper planes and who goes on a journey to Japan, to Tokyo, to compete in the World Championships.
You are best known as a very accomplished dramatic director. Why, for heaven's sake, did you decide to do a children's film?
Well, I've got a couple of young kids. I've got daughters now, 12 and 10, Kitty and Atlas. And I started working on this film, believe it or not, about 4 years ago. And I wanted to make a film for them. You know, I wanted to make a film that they'd see where the heroes of the film were Australian kids. You know, I kept taking them to films and they're watching them and the heroes are American kids. And I'm thinking, my beautiful Australian daughters are growing up in a world where the only heroes they're seeing in our cinema are American. And that wasn't my childhood. You know, my childhood was full of amazing kids' films.
Such as?
Well, Storm Boy is a classic. You know, I enjoyed the kind of Fatty Finn, Ginger Megs kind of era. But I think for me it was the, you know, believe it or not, BMX Bandits, you know, and then enjoying films slightly older, but The Big Steal and Malcolm, you know, David Parker, Nadia Tass films. And then The Year My Voice Broke. You know, so there's a real trajectory there, I think. Whereas a young person, I was watching Australian stories.
When it comes to Australian television,
yeah,
we're world class in producing product for children. Same with literature.
Yeah.
Why the disconnect between the mediums? We're great at children's TV, we're great at children's literature. When it comes to children's film, there's barely anything. Why?
It's a great question. I pondered that. You know, you think on TV, Dance Academy, Nowhere Boys, you know, global phenomenon TV that we make. And certainly in literature, you know, incredible children's authors. I've pondered this. I mean, the optimistic part of me thinks that, you know, post-Toy Story, America's been making some great kids' films. Like, probably the best stuff they do is for families. And that's kind of soaked up a lot of oxygen in that world, you know, and I think people have just thought every year there's another DreamWorks or Disney or Pixar film. But I'm never one really to kind of be, you know, knocked back in the face of those big films. You know, I feel like Australians love to, well, as we know, they love to see their own stories. They always have, we love it, it's part of who we are. You know, you see the massive success of The Water Diviner out there this Christmas. You know, you go, here's, you know, Russell brings his film out and Australians are going. So, you know, even though there haven't been films in that area, I always felt confident that if we made one, we could find a place to screen it.
Now, this is an adorable film. It is so beautifully made, so beautifully directed. The acting in it is superlative. It's funny, it's uplifting, it's bright. It has some deeper dramatic themes that help make the whole thing work. What conventions of the children's movie genre did you deliberately observe and deliberately subvert?
That's another great question. Look, I showed the script to my daughter Kitty when she was about 10 a few years ago, and she read it and she said, I said, what do you think? Would you like this as a film? She said, it's good, Dad, but it's not funny enough. And I brought on another writer, Steve Warland, who wrote the comedy, because I had to learn how to direct it. You know, I'm the director of Balibo. You know, I'm not known for comedy. I'm really proud actually that it's a funny film. But I think in the genre, in terms of engaging kids, you have to make them laugh, and I think that unlocks the ability to affect people emotionally. So if you can make people laugh, and then make a story that has a bit of emotional depth to it, you can really affect people. I guess you don't want an earnest kids film. You know, you want a fun kids film. So that was something that I was really playing with.
The children in the film are a source of strength for the adults, which I thought was a very interesting thing to tap into.
Reverse parenting.
Yeah, sort of.
Well, you know, it's like he parents his father. I mean, another thing my kids talked about was they don't want to go to the cinema and see films driven by adults.
Yes.
They want to watch kids. I mean, you go back to E.T., all those Amblin films that were being made in the US, and the pleasure of watching a film where the kids are driving every scene. You know, I had a great chat with Sam Worthington about this. I mean, he heard I was making the film out of the blue, sent me an email going, I love the idea of that film, can I help, is there a role for me? And I said, there's a role of the dad. He said, great, I love it, we should be making kids' films, I'll give you a hand. And which I thought was incredible. He came on the journey and he said, this is really hard. He said, I'm not driving the scenes, I'm used to walking in being the alpha character. He said, little Ed Oxenbould's driving every scene. And I think that was a really important discovery in the genre, to make a film where little kids can go to the cinema and see Australian kids driving every single scene.
Also, the friendship between the main character and his best mate originally starts out antagonistic.
Yeah.
And then turns into friendship.
Yeah.
And that's not something you normally see. Basically, the guy's a bit of a bully.
That's right.
And then becomes his friend.
Well, I saw that in my childhood.
Yeah.
I almost saw that the complexity of bullying comes out of such profound insecurity. If you look at a bully in any situation with your kids' friends, there's usually something else going on. Like, are we really bad, awful people at our heart? Not really. And so I tried to construct a story about a kid, played by Julian Dennison, a little Maori actor from Wellington, amazing young actor. He was in a film last year, Shopping, and very, very funny little fella. Where he's a bully, but really he just wants to be loved. He just wants a friend. And once Dillon stands up to him, our hero stands up to him, this little bully goes, oh, okay, he's pushing back a bit, and they become friends. It kind of unlocks this friendship. It's a theme, I think, for kids, this idea of the power games and the.
Dillon also has a more serious rival in the competition.
That's right.
And you set up a friendship between Dillon and the father of his main rival.
That's right.
It's beautiful because it does show sometimes a disconnect between parents and kids.
Yeah.
But why did you do that? It works really well. This is the character played by David Wenham.
Yeah, another favour. I rang David and needed someone to play that role, and a Tiger Woods-like former world golfer, and David does a great job of that. Look, I also thought, in the complexity of a story about parenting and children, that the relationships you have with your friends' parents, and how, essentially, young Dillon, played by Ed, his father's, funk, the mother's died, and, he's trying to deal with that, and the fact that he's not being parented by his dad, and he sees this other kid being parented by his dad, engages with that father, I think is a really lovely, complex situation. I gotta say, I kind of tapped into watching the world that my kids are in and watching, the world I was in as a kid. I kind of had to channel that to make the story.
Now, the mother, or the absent mother in this film, is a huge drag engine for the father character.
Yeah.
This is why he's depressed. This is why he's not really engaging with his kid. This is the most subversive thing in the film. You did not lean on the cause of her demise.
That's right.
This is something that in any other film would have taken up a lot more space and a lot more time. You obviously deliberately didn't want to lean on that. You just presented it as a fact, as a plot point, and then you move the story. Why?
Well, my observation of, kids that I know and the friends of my kids, and, we face challenges and tragedy in our life, and we move on. Kids come back to school after sad things happen, and they continue, and their friends support them, and it's part of a complex life that we live. There are the upsides, the tragedies, the great excitement, and I just wanted to have that flavour in there without making it issue-based. I just wanted to make it about a kid dealing with a sad thing that happened to him, and you know what? He's dealt with it. What I love is he says to his dad, I'm 12, I've dealt with it, mate. Move on, come on.
Well, that's the other thing about Dillon, about the main character in the film. Unlike so many other kids in films, including Alexander, the other film that Ed Oxenbould is in, is that Dillon doesn't actually have any hang-ups. He doesn't have any angst, he doesn't have any really unresolved issues. He's just a normal kid. That's very unusual for a kid's film.
I know everyone says, they have to be damaged and have to overcome things. My story is actually a story of a kid learning that he can affect his parent. I love that. I think you look at kids and they, you think, oh, they're just being dragged along by their parents. That's rubbish. They know the power they have to affect their parents in all sorts of ways. And I love that idea. He's not broken. He's fixing the world.
Did you have to pull a lot of favours to get this film made? You mentioned Sam Worthington and David Wenham.
Yeah, I pulled them all. Deborah Mailman,
yeah.
Another amazing actress.
How long have you been making films, Robert Connolly?
18 years now.
Should you have to be pulling favours to make a film?
Well, it's interesting. The more people you get to know over the years, the more relationships you get, the more you are actually able to kind of say, hey, we've got to do this. I mean, to be frank, the world didn't want to make an Australian kids film. That's what it felt like. I had to break this routine. And you know what's amazing? I know half a dozen kids films coming. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if every Christmas parents went, amongst all the films on, there was an Australian kids film every Christmas. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Why? What's the you sensed resistance?
Well,
why?
People just didn't think we should be making. I think we got stuck in a rut as an industry of kind of forgetting this audience, which is the future audience. Like if our kids don't go and watch Australian stories in the cinema, what chance have we got that they will when they're adults? So we have to make it fun for them too. And they will then, as adults, follow our national cinema. And I think we forgot that audience. And I've got I've been making films for 18 years. This is my first kids film, but so I'm part of the problem. But I know a lot of my peers are now of my age. We have kids. So I think it'll be exciting. I think we might see a few films now.
You want this film to be a progenitor, don't you?
I'd love it to be. Yeah. I'd love it to be because, every film I've made has been a battle. And I think it's a real gift when you get to make a film. It's a real privilege. I have to pinch myself. I'm a filmmaker. I get to make these stories. But when you crack that nut and you make it and it's hard, it does open the way for other people to do it more easily. And I know there's a lot of people hoping that, we can have a lot of success with this film.
How has the film sold overseas? Has it sold?
Yep, it's selling really well. It was in the Toronto Film Festival, which was great. And then it went to Busan in Korea, and it's been selling along the way. It then played yesterday in Palm Springs, which was great. And most excitingly, in 2 weeks in Berlin. Berlin Film Festival has the biggest, most important kids section in the world, and we've got a terrific position in that festival. So it's kind of been funneling to this moment at Berlin, and it's the European film market, so the world will be able to see it. And everyone is waiting to see how it goes here in Australia this week. So at Berlin, it will be really important. Everyone will be going, did it work in Australia? So, I think everything's lined up, and now we just need, a bit of, good fortune in the coming week.
So how is its local exposure shaping up?
Oh, look, I'm really excited about it. I've, really enjoyed working with Roadshow, to work with a company that can release The Hunger Games, The Hobbit, and then Paper Planes. And their whole philosophy, they don't distinguish. They don't treat me like, oh, you're the small little Aussie film. They treat it the same way. It's on the sides of buses, it's, bus shelters, there's TV ads.
The reason why I make this point is because one of the big issues with Australian films in 2014 is that people haven't been going to them, not because they're not good films, the quality of the films has actually been very high, but because of lack of public profile, lack of marketing, lack of awareness. Robert, are you happy that enough people know about this movie to go see it?
I think the campaign's the best campaign, biggest scale campaign I've ever been involved with. It's smart, it's intelligent. They've got paper plane stands in the foyers of cinema where kids can make paper planes. They've engaged with, the 2020 cricket. Peter Rosethorn's the celebrity 12th man on Wednesday night at the SCG. They're doing fun stuff, and a massive. And what I've got to say, they've spent the money. They've given it a chance. So, and as I said, I love that attitude of not treating it like the small fry film. They've treated it like a big film.